Welcome, action fans, and thanks for joining us for another edition of All 90s Action All the Time. As we continue this year's journey looking at the best and worst action, I'll read that again, the best and worst of action cinema in 1995. I'm your host, Scott Murphy, and on today's show, we are going to be talking about one of the most iconic action movies of 1995, Die Hard with a Vengeance. Alongside me to talk about this one, I have a very special returning guest. It's film reviewer and host of the Films Time Forgot podcast, Adam Thornton. Welcome
Hi
back, Adam.
there. Hi there. Glad to be back.
Ah, yeah, so it's been a while since we last had you on. We had you last on in 2022 for The World's Not Enough, and now you're returning in 2025. So you're coming back now. So yes, it's a pleasure to have you back on the podcast again after some time away.
Yeah, it's good to be back. It's been way too long.
Yes, no, absolutely, absolutely. So yes, I guess we'll do I will do the plugs at the end.
Yeah.
I will go on to today's film stats. So on to today's film, which, as I just said, is Die Hard with a Vengeance, which was released certainly in America on May 19th, 1995. It was directed by John McTiernan, who is most famous for directing the likes of the original Die Hard, Predator, and Hunt for the Red October. And it was written by Jonathan Hensley, who is most notable for being the writer of Jumanji, Armageddon, and also the writer director of the 2004 Punisher film. It has a kind of split rating critically. So it has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 60% based on 80 reviews. It has a meta score of 58 based on 19 reviews. So middling from the critics there. However, it does have an IMDb score of 7.6 out of 10 and a letterbox rating of 3.7 out of 5. So audiences bigging it up much more. Box office wise, it made over 366 million on a budget of $90 million, making it a big hit and also making it the number one film at the worldwide box office in 1995, narrowly beating out Toy Story for that crown. Although, I will say, and not to take any shine off its victory, but 1995, not a great year at the box office. I worked out that if Die Hard of the Vengeance made that total in any other year of the 90s, it would have only finished at highest third.
Wow.
It would have finished third in 94 if it came out the year before. It would have finished fourth in 96 if it came out the year after. With that box office total. So 95, not a great year at the old box office for the
Hmm.
studios.
Gosh. And then here's me thinking things were bad, now post-pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's 366 million 95 money. So I don't know what that would be adjusted for inflation. I didn't look that up.
I mean, if it's one of the highest grossing, it would have to be a fair amount in the sort of 900 million ratio, I guess. It's sort of the
Hmm,
900 million kind of range, I guess.
I don't know. I don't know if it would be as high as that, to be honest. But I'm not sure. I can't say what they adjusted it for inflation figure um would would be, but I don't know. I think it would be more like double. I think it would be more like in the 700 range.
About 750 kind of.
Yeah, probably something like that adjusted. Um, yeah, something like that. I would imagine, but yeah. I mean, obviously, the year before, like, you've got like the year before you've got in '94 like Forrest Gump, which made like over it's something like 650 million, and then you've
Mm,
got The
yeah.
Lion King, which made like 900 million,
Oh
and
yeah.
then and then and then 96 you've got Independence Day, which made like 800
Mm.
million. And then both Mission Impossible and Twisters made over 450, something like that. I can't remember the exact figures off the top of my head, but
And that's not adjusted for inflation. That's the actual
I
figures.
think that's the actual. I think that's the actual figures. Although I'm not sure. Like uh, with these box office totals, um, I'm never quite sure, like what it includes. So, for example, with The Lion King, so The Lion King's the number one thing at the box office in '94, and it says like 900 million, and like the year before, the number one film at the box office in '93 would have been Jurassic Park, and it says
Yeah.
like a billion.
That doesn't
However,
sound right.
However, I, I don't know what the actual, I don't know what the, so I don't know what they're including. So like with Jurassic Park, with things like Jurassic Park and The Lion King, I don't know if they're including the just including the box office of their original run, or if they're including in the box office of the times it's been re-released as well at the cinema. So
Think
like,
they're also it's also maybe a combination of domestic and international box office as
oh no
well.
no. So this is the worldwide box office numbers. So
Ah, ah,
this
okay,
is a
okay.
combination. This is I
Okay,
always do the
okay,
worldwide box office numbers. So it's always a combination of
okay,
international
okay.
and domestic. Um. So like this is a total. This is a total. But like that's what I'm saying. You know how like for like anniversaries things get re-released at the cinema.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know if they're including the total the combined total of the times have also been re-released. I don't know how they
Okay.
work that out or whether it's just from their original theatrical run. But anyway, yes, but I did think that was interesting that like pretty much any other year, the highest Die Hard with a
Hmm.
Vengeance would have hit was third. So yeah, I thought that was quite interesting.
Isn't this also the highest charting Die Hard film in the top 10 box office?
Yes, I think it's the only one that's like the biggest picture of the year, I believe. Yeah, because yeah, no, because the other ones definitely definitely aren't. Because like the second Die Hard would have been 1990, and it was beaten at the box office by a number of things. I don't know what the where it came in the box office total, but it certainly wasn't number one. Because we I guess we can we quickly find out what where did Die Hard 2 come. Die Hard 2.
I think it was quite low in the top 10. I think it was like 7 or something.
Hmm,
Same with the original Die Hard.
hmm. Okay, I can't find it. Oh no, hang on. I'm looking at the wrong year. Um, yes, you're right. Die Hard 2 was seventh. So like Ghost, Home Alone, Pretty Women, Dances with Wolves, Total Recall, and Back to the Future 3 all made more money than Die Hard 2. Um, uh, and Die Hard came eighth in the top 10 of its
Hmm.
year, where it was beaten by Rain Man, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Coming to America, Crocodile Dundee 2, Twins, Rambo 3, and Big. So there we go.
It's kind of amazing that like Rambo 3 and Crocodile Dundee 2 beat out Die Hard. It's like I
Yeah.
think in the year Aliens came out, it was only number 7 at the box office as well. And I think before that you had again the original Crocodile Dundee and Karate Kid 2 and like The Golden Child coming before it.
Yeah, no, box office can be weird, for sure. Uh, I feel like yeah, it can be odd. Like you know, uh, I think like because like sometimes things will come. Talking about your podcast, films that films that time forgot. Like. for example, I saw on Twitter somebody posting about a film called The Secret of My Success, which is a Michael J.
Oh
Fox film.
yeah,
Michael J. Fox comedy I had literally never heard of until last year, and it was 12th at the box office, the worldwide box office in 1987, and beat the likes of RoboCop, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Full Metal Jacket. you
it's
know, like,
insane. It's
um,
insane.
so like, yeah, it's pretty wacky. Yeah, so
Hmm.
so sometimes, yeah, sometimes you know, it kind of throws up stuff like that. But I guess we'll cut back now to Die Hard with a Vengeance. Now, I'm going to presume that you have seen Die Hard with a Vengeance before, but just tell us a little bit about your relationship to the film, maybe when you first saw it, how many times you've seen it, you know, kind of thoughts when you first saw it, that kind of thing.
Well, what's interesting is this, but I caught it on TV. I would have been around 14. I would have
Mm-hmm.
seen the first two Die Hards before on TV
Mm-hmm.
about a year or two prior. And all I knew about it when it first came on TV was that Samuel Jackson was in it as well. Um, I actually really liked it because of the way it shook up the formula. It's not just John McClane in an unfamiliar place.
Mm-hmm.
It's him in a city, but in a whole city this time, not just confined to one particular setting. I really liked the kind of byplay between Bruce Willis and Samuel Jackson. Preferred it to the second film because largely because a lot of it was just so different from the from the original film. It wasn't just trying to copy its best moments. And I mean, I saw it once on TV. I think I saw it again another time a few years later. And it wasn't until I got the Blu-ray box set about 10 years ago that I saw it. I saw it again. Um, but yeah, then watching it again on Blu-ray and watching it as well again for this podcast, it kind of just reminds me of what a great sequel it is. I mean, normally the third installment is when a lot of franchises, particularly action franchises, start to run out of steam. Like we mentioned, Rambo 3. I'm going to include Lethal Weapon 3 as well.
Sure.
And if we're going to go a much later, Terminator 3, and around about the time, around about the time the first Die Hard came out, Karate Kid 3 was kind of dying at its arse. And it's a credit to John McTiernan, Jonathan Hensley, and Bruce Willis, and Samuel Jackson, and the rest of the cast and crew that, Die Hard with a Vengeance didn't end up being like that.
No, absolutely, and it does change up the formula. And I guess part of the reason it changes up the formula is the fact that it wasn't originally a Die Hard.
No.
Like, so, as you probably know, I feel like quite a lot of people. This is quite common knowledge, but I'll say it anyway in case people don't know. Jonathan Hensley wrote a spec script called Simon Says, and which had nothing to do with Die Hard, and he was shopping it around, and you know, eventually it ended up becoming this film. And Jonathan, according to Jonathan Hensley, most of the first hour of this movie is pretty much just his original script, and obviously the original script goes off in a different direction that's non-Die Hard related. But yeah, so like pretty much the first hour of this movie that we watched, it comes from that original script, the Simon Says script that was non-Die Hard related, and then they just kind of, and often when people try to retrofit a script. You know, this has happened quite a lot in like horror franchises, for example. There is a number of entries in the Hellraiser franchise where somebody has written a kind of supernatural horror murder mystery script, and then it's been like, yeah, this is fine. Can we stick Pinhead in it? And then and then it becomes a Hellraiser film
Yeah.
all of a sudden. And often retrofitting scripts like that don't go well because it feels like the element of the franchise is shoehorned into a completely unrelated script and it feels disjointed. But and maybe it's because Jonathan Hensley wrote the script for this and also wrote the spec script, and often it's a case of somebody writes a spec script and then they get an outside writer to retrofit it for a franchise. So maybe it's because of that, because there's the same writer all the way through.
Didn't they
Maybe that helps.
also didn't they also do that with the second film though? They took an original script and retrofitted it to make it into a sequel to the first film.
I Yes, if I remember correctly, I think you're right in that. I think you're right in that. So like so this is yes, part of the Die Hard. I don't think the others are like that. I don't think the fourth and fifth one are like that. But like I think you're I think you're right. I think it was like a separate thing. It had like a Die Hard type situation at an airport, but it wasn't specifically written as a Die Hard film originally. Um, but then they saw the similarities enough to be like, oh yeah, we can make
Yeah.
this a Die Hard film. Um,
Which
yeah,
is interesting because the second film really does feel like it would be written as specifically as a sequel to the first film because there's so many more similarities. Whereas with this film, you can kind of tell that, oh yeah, this movie started off as like a buddy cop thing
yeah,
that then got retrofitted into the Die Hard universe.
yeah. No, no, absolutely. Because like you say, you would imagine that Die Hard 2 is just very much written as a direct sequel because it does all the sequel things where it like copies a bunch of things from the original, but
Yeah,
then makes it bigger and louder and
yeah.
all that kind of stuff. So it very much does the typical sequel thing. So yeah, that is more surprising, but like you say,
Although Although I do feel like this film fits in much more into the spirit of the first film, particularly in the way it uses its supporting characters. And I don't know, I think that's maybe where John McTiernan comes in, because I always feel like he's very good with ensemble casts.
I think so. I think like a lot of people have pointed out that like even though obviously he does extraordinary things and obviously he's a bit of a super cop in this movie and in the original movie. I think like a lot of people have pointed out that like he's more grounded. He's more an everyday hero in this movie, like the original movie. Unlike the second one, where he tips more
Yeah,
into the kind of like the Arnie Sly kind of like
yeah.
uber action hero, and more in the second one. I think a lot of people like that as well. That they kind of brought him down to earth a bit and kind of made him more kind of everyday hero again.
Yeah, I mean, and you can also, and also it's because it's not just him saving the day. He's got Zeus and Samuel Jackson's character helping out, but there's also the long plot thread with his superior and his two other cops, and the other cops going to the school to deal with the bomb. It's not just McClane doing all this himself, which again goes back to the even the first film. I mean, okay, there's him in Nakatomi Plaza, but you've also got Al Powell on the ground, and you've got the cops and the FBI as well. You've got Strands dealing with them. You've also got Holly as well. It's cutting back to these supporting characters so that it doesn't just become the John McClane show or the Bruce Willis show. And I feel like Die Hard with a Vengeance very much takes that approach and pushes it to the next level.
No, I agree with that. I agree with that. Like it's more like it kind of leans back more on the ensemble. And I think like that again makes him like a more grounded hero again. Like in the first one. Um Whereas obviously in the second one you're closer to the kind of one man army type
Yeah,
movies. Um
with the big over the top kills as well, like the icicle stuff.
Yeah, yeah. For sure. And so I think that's why a lot of people like, and I don't hate Die Hard too. Like it's got some fun stuff in it. Particularly, I generally enjoy William Sadler and like the kind of turn that like John Amos does. Where you think he's like on McLean's side, and then like the like is it a SEAL team that he leads? Or
Yeah, I
like it's
think it
some
is.
some sort of like Navy SEAL team or whatever. Um, And like then when he to reveal to be a villain, there's some fun twists in it. There's some fun performances in it. But yeah, overall, I much prefer this one, and I think a good chunk of why I prefer it is like it kind of feels more in the original spirit of it, and you got more of that ensemble. You got more of it, like McLean not just being the kind of one man army plowing through
Yeah.
dozens of villains.
Because it also means you get a great supporting casting as well, because you've not just got Samuel Jackson, but you've got the but on but as McLean's fellow cops, you've got Graham Greene from Dances with
Yes,
Wolves, I think,
you do, you
and
do.
you've got Colin Camp, who Bruce Lee fans will infamously know appeared as his love interest in the big budget Bruce exploitation 1978 version of Game of Death, and she was also in Clue as the sexy waitress,
Yes,
and
Yvette the maid.
yeah, yeah, and she was also in Wayne's World as well.
She's in Wayne's World. She's in a couple of police academies. Like it's interesting because like as a kid I wouldn't really know who Colleen Camp is, but like uh rewatching it again I was like, oh yeah, Colleen Camp's in this. Like
Yeah,
I kind of remembered Graham Greene was in it, but like I hadn't I hadn't kind of clocked that, and I was like, oh yeah, oh she is fun in things. Although it's maybe a bit different role for her. She's kind of funny in this, but like she's not explicitly comedic,
yeah,
like
she's more of a hard-edged kind of cop type.
yeah, exactly. And like because like I mainly know her for her comedy roles, like I think of her more as a comic actress, but like I guess she does all sorts. But no, she's good in it. Yeah, she's good, and
Yeah,
as is pretty much everybody. Like I think everybody really plays their part. And I mean, and I guess like that was a big pull for me as well. Like when I picked this up as a kid, like I bought this on VHS probably a couple of years after it came out. I think maybe around '97, so I'd be about 12. Um, and I watched this multiple times on VHS, and I had watched a lot of Bruce Willis films, so that was a pull. And also, I was a big fan of Samuel L. Jackson, so that was a pull as well. So like I think, and generally all the performances are good across the board. And I would say as well, like, and I don't know how you feel about this, but one of the big pulls for I've talked about this on the podcast multiple times. One of the big pulls for me in action movies is villains. Like so
oh yeah,
what so in these '90s action movies that we're talking about, you know. I, the main reason I like Robin Hood Prince of Thieves is because Alan Rickman's is the sheriff of Nottingham. Like Under Siege is really taken to the next level because of Tommy Lee Jones and Gary Busey as the villains. And there's a number of other ones. We can talk about the Gary Oldman villain universe. In like
oh yeah,
Leon and Air Force One and Fifth Element, and even True Romance, which is kind of action adjacent, I guess. Like all that kind of stuff. And I think Jeremy Irons as Simon Gruber is right up there. I really
oh yeah.
have always loved his performance in this movie.
He
Um,
manages to equal Alan Rickman, which is a very hard task.
yes, I would say he does. I would say he does. I think he's truly, and I think that it's like an interesting character because it's like I think for most of the first hour when he's just on his
Yeah,
own before he's
yeah.
revealed, I think he doesn't like overplay it. I think he's genuinely quite sinister. And
Oh
then
yes.
once he becomes on screen, he
Oh
becomes
yeah.
he becomes a bit more outlandish. But I
Yeah.
think that's also fun. Like, and when he
I
puts
mean,
on
as
his
soon as
mask.
he's doing the different accents, as like the kind of the deep South American kind of building contractor guy, and then he does like a Dutch accent when he's actually going into the bank. Yeah,
Oh,
they're really good.
I think the bank teller, I think the security guard says something about Swedish, doesn't he?
No, I think he says Dutch. I think he
Oh,
says, "Aren't you in the tulip business or something?"
ah, okay, okay, cool,
I
cool,
think
cool.
he says Dutch.
Right, okay, okay, cool. Yes, so when he's doing that different accents, that's fun. Yes, and like you say, when he's like the guy in the kind of the dump truck business from the city
Yeah.
council, and he's doing just the broadest American
Oh
accent
yeah.
you've ever heard. Like,
Yeehaw. Yeehaw, cowboy. I
it's
mean,
very funny.
I think it says a lot about the NYPD that they fall for it.
Yeah, no, it doesn't bode well for them. Like certainly in this movie. But then, I
Mm.
mean, I guess like the one thing that John McClane tends to be like a super cop in this movie is like he tends to be the one who like figures shit out, and everybody else is like caught on the hoof of like there's
Yeah.
yeah, and so you do wonder about the quality of detective work
Yeah.
amongst the other detectives
Yeah.
in his precinct or across the NYPD in
I
this particular
mean, I
cinematic
mean,
universe.
well, it's interesting actually what he cottons onto because he's the one that works out Simon's plan
Yes.
about hitting the bank. I mean, he works it out just from a kid saying, you could rob City Hall, and he's just like, aha, they're robbing the bank, and it's almost like the 1960s Batman level of deduction where it's just instantaneously he knows what they're talking about. And similarly later on when there's a woman who cuts him and Zeus off in the highway, they go, who do they think she is? Who does she think she is? Hillary Clinton. And then immediately they go, oh, Simon's clue means is referring to the number of presidents.
Yeah,
It's
because
like, it's
Bill's
like,
the
but it's
42nd. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's Adam West Batman level logic, but it works in the context of the film,
Yes,
and it
there
keeps and
is.
it keeps the pace up as well.
And also it does, and it's pretty great as well. Like for example, like you say, when the kid says, "Oh, you could steal City Hall," like the way they do it, the way the camera movement is done, so we know that he's like worked out like what's
Yeah,
going on. Like things
yeah,
like
it,
that
it's
is really good.
yeah, it's basically the cinematic equivalent of like the light bulb above the head going on.
Basically, yes.
Oh, but one thing I also like is the way the film starts.
Mhm.
Even though it's 2 hours long, the pacing is so much quicker than the other two films, but not in a bad way. It's like immediately we get like the building, Simon's first bomb blowing up, and immediately we get the cops on him, on his, we immediately get
Yeah.
his demands being fed to the cops, and then we cut to like drunk McLean or hungover McLean rather in the police van. I like that they kind of didn't do the whole setup thing that they did in the first two films, where they slowly introduce John McClane in a situation, then they slowly unveil the villain's plan. They instead they instead avert audiences' expectations right away.
Absolutely. And I think that like I'm not sure if that was like them paying attention to other things that were happening around the time. I don't know like how long in production this was. Um, but I felt it's like similar, like last year rewatching like Speed, which similarly kind of gets you right in there. But
Yeah,
I was thinking, oh, maybe they're kind of paying attention to things and being like, oh, maybe let's get it going.
yeah,
Let's get it going as quickly as possible. But I mean, and just like Speed, this movie kind of hits the ground running. You've got an incident, and we know what Simon's about. We know what is going to, we know we're going to have to get McLean, and we're off to the races. So like, yeah, no, I've always liked this as I've always really liked this opening as well because and I really like the way that it's done because we get the title card and then we open with this
hot time summer in the city.
hot time summer in the city. We're getting all these establishing shots of New York, and then we think we're going to cut to a scene, either with McLean or at the police
Yeah,
station or whatever, but we don't. Just in the middle of getting all these establishing shots, out of
yeah,
nowhere, we get like an explosion. You were like, "What the fuck?"
yeah,
And it's like, okay, the plot is beginning now,
yeah.
you know. And I think it's a really, really effective opening. I think you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Also, as well in the kind of cop car with McClane, you also get some foreshadowing for later on. Like you get him asking the other cops about the lottery, about all the cops doing the lottery and using the same numbers, and you get another cop there, Ricky, and how he always uses his badge number as is his lottery number, and that comes into play later on when McClane first enters is it the central bank he enters?
It's the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, Federal Reserve. Yeah. So yeah, as I was saying, there's a lot of foreshadowing
Hmm.
in that kind of opening scene, and you also get it then in the next scene when McClane's in Harlem, and before we see him, we cut to the introduction of Samuel Jackson's character, who's the store owner, electronic store owner called Zeus, and you see him and his nephews who brought in this stereo that they've been given that's obviously been stolen, and obviously that kind of foreshadows the kind of actions their characters make again later on in the film. But it's all really good scene setting and foreshadowing, really the exact same as the first film. And it's so hard to pull off without making it seem clunky. But if you don't have it in place, it then means certain plot points just come out of nowhere. And I think that, like with the first film, McTiernan and the script do a really good job of just, setting up these plot points early on in the film, only for them to pay off later.
No, I would absolutely agree with that, and I think that it's a real sign of high level filmmaking to set up that sort of foreshadowing because, like, to do kind of callbacks like that is really difficult because, like, you don't want to make it so blatant that the audience is going to go, well, that'll come back later, and you
Yeah,
don't want to make it so subtle to make the audience confused later, being like,
yeah.
was that a thing earlier? Did I miss something? You know, like so. And I think it is one of those things. It's a trick that kind of always works. You know, however however much an audience is, you know, it doesn't matter whether they're kind of a casual audience or a more cinephile audience. It always, like, you know, kind of, it's an enjoyable moment, and you know it's a thing that I think like filmmakers like to do because, like, it's a clever thing for them, and it kind of makes the audience feel clever as well, of being like,
Oh
oh
yeah,
yes, I remember the badge from earlier with the, oh
yeah.
yes, 6991, that's, you know, it's Ricky's badge. Oh yeah, okay, they were talking about that in the van, you know, like so yeah, I think and I think it's really good, and I think they really pull it off because, like, you don't really, it's like when they're having that conversation, it just feels like a natural conversation. You don't necessarily think. It's not like one of those things where, you know, the camera lingers on like a gun, or like, or a certain thing. You know, it's like, oh, okay, right, oh,
Or
okay, yeah.
or there's like really clunky exposition as to why Holly isn't in this film.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. Exactly. I think so. I think yeah. I think it's really well done. I think it's quite a difficult skill to pull off without either making it too big, um, or too small. So like yeah. Do you know, like, you talking about that scene where we get the introduction between Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson's character Zeus.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. I was kind of reading up, and it does make sense. It does make sense that, like, the the wording that is on the
Oh
sign
yes.
was not on the sign in real life. That was put
Yeah.
on in post production because I understand.
Oh
I
yes.
I
I
I
hate N words.
Exactly. I understand why that was not put on a sign, and like, because I mean that does seem like, you know, pretty life endangering.
You would not have that subplot
Yeah.
in a blockbuster film made today, R-rated or otherwise.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. I think yeah, it would certainly be much more of a controversial talking point. I mean, I guess the way it is done, it's kind of okay because it's like he's forced to do it by a villain, and like, but yeah, I guess
And the scene's also over and done with. They try and get it over and done with as quickly as possible in terms of, McClane immediately gets surrounded by a bunch of black guys who take offense. He manages to quickly convince Samuel Jackson that he's a cop. Zeus looks at the back of his looks at his back, realizes he's got a gun taped to his back, and then immediately tries to defuse the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's just like the filmmakers, John McTiernan, like the cast and crew being smart enough to know that like this doesn't need to be dragged on any longer than it absolutely needs to be. I mean, like you could argue it doesn't really need to be there, whatever. There's an argument
But
for
it
that,
is an
but like
interesting. But it is an interesting dynamic, though, that
yeah, it sets
again
up an
sets
interesting.
the film apart from the first two films, where McClane's kind of black sidekicks Argyle and I think it's Leslie in the second film. He thinks he's
Mhm.
like he's like the airport worker.
That's
There
it.
isn't really any discussion of race around them at all, and they're very much just like nice, and they're very much kind of like cheerful, helpful, just kind of supporting characters that are just there just to help McClane kind of get
I
to where he needs to
wonder
get to.
I wonder if like it's interesting that I wonder if it's like a kind of sign of the times. I wonder if it's like one of those things that they felt that they had to address it a little bit more, particularly because Die Hard 1 and 2, pre Rodney King.
Yeah,
Die Hard with a Vengeance, post Rodney King by
which
about
is
three
even
years,
referenced later on.
which is even referenced in the movie, exactly, so I wonder if they felt they had to touch on it more.
Hmm.
Like,
I think, but also as well, it's for what it's another thing that sets it apart
sure, yeah,
from
yeah,
the
yeah.
first two films. Like, we're not even like 10 minutes into the film, and already it feels so different from the first two Die Hard films of it's taking place in multiple locations in New York. You've suddenly got Bruce Willis surrounded by a bunch of angry black guys who are attempting to kill him because of this racist sign he's wearing. You're immediately sucked into the plot. It's a complete wake up call for anybody that was expecting again a knockoff of the first two films, which you'd not only had with the second Die Hard film, but you'd had it now with the two Under Siege films. The sequel to Under Siege was coming out the same year, and that was a knockoff, and that was practically repeating the Die Hard formula to death. So
I mean,
by
there's
doing something different,
so many films throughout the 90s that repeated the Die Hard format.
yeah, but what I'm saying is this: that by beginning the film in this way, you've already shaken the audience up so much to say this isn't your typical Die Hard film, and to throw all expectations as to the formula out the window.
Yeah, and I mean, I think they made a couple of very good decisions. I think to kind of shake up the format was good. I think, like we've been saying about the Samuel L. Jackson character, I think that's good because, the characters, the kind of sidekick characters in Die Hard and Die Hard Two, they very much felt like sidekicks, whereas Samuel L. Jackson character feels more like a partner. He has like more.
Yeah,
He never feels like an adjunct to not John McClane. He always feels like he is a character on his own. You know what I mean?
yeah, and it's interesting that this again comes so early in Samuel Jackson's career as a star that it's weird that the role actually wasn't written for him. I read somewhere it was originally meant to be Lawrence Fishburne, who I can't see at all in the role. It really does seem like such a classic Samuel Jackson role, but it's interesting that watching him in this film, you'd think he was an established star rather than somebody who'd only really been massively famous as an A-lister for only a year or so.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously his big, and he'd been around for a while, but his like big international breakthrough was Pulp Fiction, which was
Yeah,
only the year before. Um, so yeah, I mean, and like you say, it is weird because kind of following Samuel L. Jackson's career after, like you say, this seems like a kind of pretty typical like Samuel Jackson type character. Like you see this character and you're like, oh, Samuel Jackson's exactly the guy
yeah,
they should have got for this. But like, yeah, no, it's interesting. It's interesting that
yeah.
like fame came to him like a little bit a little bit later. You know what? He wasn't just like in his 20s or whatever. It was like, he's like
But
a
when it
little
did
bit later
come,
for him. You know.
but when it did come, it came rapidly. Like right after Pulp Fiction, you've got this role. It's just such an amazing step up.
Oh yeah, I mean absolutely. I mean like it is it's an incredible kind of like you go from Pulp Fiction, which made like I think like around 200 million
Oh
and
yeah,
was one of the top 10 in 1994 to this, which is a number one film in 95, and then we're only 4 years away from like Phantom Menace, like
yeah, yeah,
so yeah, no, I mean it's pretty incredible, the things um post Pulp Fiction it goes pretty quickly to
yeah.
him going kind of stratospheric.
And one more thing before we move on from him,
Yep.
I think that the reason why the pairing up of McClane and Zeus works in this film and the other sidekick stuff they do in the next two films, with Justin Long and Jai Courtney, they don't work is because if you want to have somebody on an equal footing to Bruce Willis, you need somebody of an equal star power and with an equal A-list presence to
Yes.
be able to work alongside him. Otherwise, you're just playing a glorified version of the sidekick roles in the first two films, but stretched out to feature length. And that's what you get, unfortunately, with the Justin Long and Jai Courtney roles in the fourth and fifth film. Not that they're bad actors, but they just don't have the acting prowess and the charisma of somebody like Samuel L. Jackson. So you don't want to really watch them for 2 hours, or in Die Hard 5's case, 90 minutes, fortunately.
Yeah, a long 90 minutes.
Oh boy, tell me about it. I watched it last night and it was 90 minutes of my life I'm not getting back.
So it's since its release in like 2013, was that the first time you had seen
Yeah,
uh
yeah, first time I'd seen it.
yeah, it's not required viewing, but I mean, at least I guess like it's one of those things that like there's
Well,
certain
I guess I wanted to compare and contrast it to Die Hard with a Vengeance, and it just falls
okay,
short in every category.
yeah, I mean like it falls short compared to any of the like I honestly think that like Die Hard 2 and even Live Free or Die Hard look pretty great in comparison to A Good Day to Die Hard.
Oh
I
yeah,
I think like I don't know. It's just one of those things. I think it's partly Jai Courtney is just not um great in that movie. Like I'm not a big Jai Courtney fan. There's a couple of things I've seen in that I'm like, oh, he's okay
yeah,
in that, but uh, not great. Doesn't have a lot of charisma in that movie, and also it just I guess of all the movies, it looks the ugliest as well. It has like that.
yeah. Oh
It has
God,
that early
yeah.
2010s kind of
Oh,
grayness
teal and
to it.
orange. Oh,
Yeah,
where everything looks like a Saw film for some reason.
yeah. No, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that. It's like, oh, everything's kind of grungy and brown and green and like it's like there's a lot of movies made kind of between about 2004 and like 2014. There's a lot of
Yeah,
that kind of Saw movie look to both action and horror movies that just kind of gungy,
yeah,
grungy, and it's like it just looks ugly. It's one of the ugliest. I think it's one of the ugliest periods of cinema.
yeah. Oh, completely. And also one thing that Die Hard a good day to Die Hard lacks that this film has is a compelling villain. Like in the next two scenes when we see like Simon sort of like taunting McClane and Zeus on the phone, both at the police station, and then when he's setting out his first sort of riddle or challenge,
Yeah.
rather, it just beats anything that whatever Die Hard 5's villain did.
Yeah, and like again, like kind of cutting across like a couple of conversations we've been having. Again, I feel like that's a good callback. Like but like when they're having that phone conversation where they're taunting Simon,
Yeah,
and they and then later on in the movie, towards the end of the movie, Simon kind of reveals that like the stutter he was putting on was like put on, like
Yeah,
it was like to kind of as part of the game, as part of to kind of fool them, and I thought that was quite funny, and also like that scene is like I feel like is a classic action movie scene because like as much there's like a as much as I do love action movies, and it's why I host this podcast, there's like a core conservatism to action movies that like goes against my natural socialist ways.
right,
Um, but it's like a classic one of those scenes in action movies. The things you learn from action movies is eternal internal affairs are scum. All defense lawyers are either money grubbing or corrupt or both.
right,
And like psychiatrists are idiots. Like
right.
like that's
Oh yeah, yeah.
like that's that's what you
Well,
learn from action
to
movies. And
be well, to be fair though, I mean, if the psychiatrist in this film does correctly identify that Simon is his actual name and that he's going after McLean, but what he doesn't
that's
realize is that, that's secondary to Simon's main goal, which to be fair wouldn't be obvious to like anyone. It's not like with
true.
it's not like in the Lethal Weapon films where the psychiatrist in that just becomes gradually more and more useless as the films
Yeah,
go
no,
on.
no, no. It's true, and like his guesses seem pertinent and
Yeah.
correct based on the information available. Like like obviously broadening it, but I do, yeah, and also like yeah, we're not. This film doesn't go out its way to kind of dunk on therapy or psychiatry in the way that
No.
a lot of action movies do. So I no, I take your point there. Yeah, absolutely. Um, at least he does get a couple of things correct, unlike a number of other ways the way psychiatrists are portrayed in a number of other action movies. Um,
Also, what I like about jumping ahead to Simon's first riddle is
sure.
how you've got both McLean and Zeus sort of working together to solve it. I mean, okay, it's mainly Zeus kind of leads to begin with, but it's not just Zeus just sort of being like the kind of the sidekick who just makes occasional comments whilst McLean does everything. It's like actually it shows that there's a good balance between the two.
Yes, because like they kind of really work together to solve um all the riddles. Although I have to say, like I have I have read up on like how the 3 gallon
Oh
bottle and the
yeah,
5 gallon bottle. I have read up like how it works, and like it makes sense. It makes sense when you read how it works, how the how to solve that
yeah.
particular riddle works. It makes sense. Um, so that's
I
fine.
I I actually thought with that one that McLean's initial suggestion was actually the best one, and I don't know why they didn't just go for that one.
Yeah, because like it's perfectly you can read it you can read up online of like how to solve it, but like how they actually solve it in the movie does make it quite confusing. Like because
Yeah,
like
it's
they
quite kind of
just kind of
convoluted.
they're quite convoluted and they just kind of solve it and you just kind of go along with it of being like all right
Well, I
yeah
mean, but it's
yeah
just like, I mean, I would have been okay with it had McLean not come up with the actual sensible, shorter answer
yes
in the beginning, you know. And it's just like, well, we'll just go for that then. I mean, they should have just had him like not have a clue, or had both of them just be flummoxed by it initially, and then slowly work out, rather than have McLean immediately jump to the right answer straight away, and then they have to have Samuel Jackson say, no, 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 he said exact, and it's like, well, his answer would have been exact, so
yeah yeah. No, like so it is quite convoluted how that scene plays out. Yeah. So
I mean, that's just minor nitpicking because I mean, the film. I mean, that's just minor nitpicking in what's otherwise a really good sequel.
oh no, absolutely. Because there's not a lot to kind of there's not a lot that drags this film down. Like it
No,
is paced very well. It's directed
yeah,
very well. The ensemble cast, nobody, there's no real
because
weak links in the ensemble cast.
it's like as soon as we get the false alarm with Simon's first phone call in New York, where the bomb he says is in a is in a nearby bin, isn't actually there.
Hmm.
He then immediately says, "No, I put a bomb on the subway train," and you can, and McClane and Zeus immediately see that there's a subway train literally underneath them through some grating, and just go down and immediately go off racing to the next subway station. It's like there's no let up.
No, absolutely not. And I mean, like the only things that you can like maybe mark against it in terms of like, yes, it's a kind of typical action movie. It's a bit silly. It's a bit over the top. Like you mentioned earlier, Adam. Some of the some of the deducing of
Yeah,
things is a bit kind of left field, a bit Adam West Batman, like you say. So
but
there's
but it
going
is
to
but
be
it is fair to kind of keep the pace going because
yeah,
otherwise
yeah,
the
yeah.
film would
No,
sort of
no,
stretch on for another half hour and
I,
then become a
exactly.
bit tedious.
Exactly. So like I get it from terms of like keeping that keeping that pace tight. Um so like yeah, so I'm not even really dunking on the film for that. I'm just saying if you were to kind of if you were looking for things, I was just saying if you were looking for things, you might focus in on that. But like you, I think in terms of like pacing and keeping it tight and keeping it exciting, all from beginning to end, I don't have any issue with like John McClane kind of pulling some of the clues out of his ass.
Yeah.
I don't really because like
Also, Also, another thing I want to say in this film's favor is setting it in New York and the city means, as a whole, means that you get a wider variety of action sequences compared with the first two films. Like you have some really great car chase scenes, like when McClane and Zeus then race in the taxi to find the subway station.
Subway Mom, yeah.
Yeah, to find the subway station to get to the bomb on Wall Street. And there's this. That's just really well filmed. I mean, when the car's cutting across Central Park and you've got the whole thing of watch out, you're gonna hit somebody, and he said no, and he's saying no, I'm avoiding everybody apart from that mine.
Yeah, no, I think that is for me one of the best scenes in the movie. Like because I think that both Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson are on the top of their game bantering in that taxi and they're bantering back and forth. It's like, I used to be a taxi driver. And I said, the fastest way to go through Park Drive. And I said, I didn't say Park Drive. I said the park. And then they're just driving through Central Park. Like and all that kind of quippiness, I think they're absolutely firing on all cylinders in that scene. I think it just in terms of like a dialogue scene and in
Oh
terms of
yeah,
like a Bruce Willis and Samuel Jackson scene, I think aside from the action, I think that's one of the best
and it
scenes.
feels so natural as well. Like you couldn't have. I mean, you couldn't tell that this was originally another script that had been rewritten to be a Die Hard script. It just feels like something that would be natural for McClane to do, or the way he's interacting with Zeus. It feels so natural for him.
Yeah, I mean absolutely, and like it it's a great extension to the original film. Like the fact that we have. I mean, obviously, we kind of um, I think it's even quite fun how we kind of replay the twists of the original film.
Oh yeah,
Like I think even that's quite, because you could just say, oh well, they're just kind of doing the original. It
oh
seems
yeah,
like they're, just like in the original, they seems like they're terrorists. They're actually just thieves. Like
yeah.
in
But
this
the,
one, they kind of send them up as kind of like terrorists in this way again, and oh, they're actually just thieves. And you think it's about vengeance. Actually, vengeance is kind of there, a bonus, but
yeah.
it's not. It's not really the important thing for Simon. But like, I think because I think it kind of suits. I don't know how you feel, but like because Simon is Hans' brother, the fact that he might play some of the same tricks or do or have some of the same kind of plans kind of makes sense in my head. Like in terms of
I
like that
think
reveal
what helps.
in the
I think
replay.
what helps is the way the characters performed. Like Jeremy Irons, he doesn't just copy Alan Rickman. I think he makes
No.
Simon a lot more flamboyant and a lot more kind of confident in a way that, again, he makes him more flamboyant and confident that in a way that Alan Rickman doesn't and didn't play hands. Also, I think the fact that the way they get the gold from the Federal Reserve is, again, it's different enough from the first Die Hard when they do the robbery,
Yeah.
with the trucks going underneath the wrecked subway station and etc., that it all kind of feels unique, whilst at the same time covering, it covers the fact that they're covering old ground very well, I feel.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And again, I think that like, you know, often when there is something like a logical flaw in a movie, sometimes it stands out. But if a movie is paced away is
Yeah.
good enough, and if a movie is entertaining enough, you just go along with things. Now, somebody might logically come along and go, well, you'd need a hell of a lot more dump trucks to get all that gold out the Federal Reserve, and you'd be like, logically, in the real world, you are correct, sir. But like in terms of like what we're doing here,
Yeah.
like it's entertaining enough that I literally don't care that they only have
I
14
mean,
dump trucks and they
I
would
mean,
need
you could
probably
argue
about
the whole.
400.
I
Like
mean, I mean, I mean, you can make that same argument for the subplot with the school, where
yeah,
Simon says, "Oh, I planted a bomb in the school. Which one is it?" And then it turns out to be a dud. I mean, and it's foreshadowed and yet it's actually, they actually tell you it in the first scene they introduced him. They actually show Simon's face.
yep,
When they actually show Jeremy Irons physically, he says, "Aha, they bought it." So right away, the audience knows it's a scam.
yes, absolutely,
But it's all a deception
yeah.
to draw
Uh,
attention of the cops away from what Simon's actually doing. But it doesn't matter because the way the whole stuff with the school is executed is so good. It's so the tension being built where you've got, McClane's other cops like Graham Greene and Colin Camp trying to get the kids out. Then they find out Zeus's nephews are still in the school and they're trying to get them out. And you've got McClane and Zeus trying to get the code. The tension of the way it's built up and the way it's being acted, it doesn't matter that it's superfluous. It really doesn't.
no, I would agree with that, and I think like again, I think that's like a great reveal. The way he is first introduced on screen because we've just had him as a voice for quite a while, pretty much the first hour of the movie,
Yeah,
um,
yeah. It's
and
about the 40. It's about the 45-minute mark we get
yeah,
in.
yeah, like so like yeah, and it just kind of cuts. It kind of cuts up to this rooftop, and he's looking through the binoculars, and yeah, and then we get that introduction. I think it's like really effectively done, and I think it's a great introduction for Simon Gruber, for the character Simon Gruber, and yeah, I have nothing but praise for Jeremy Irons' performance in this. I think like Jeremy Irons is one of those slightly divisive actors who some people think can be a bit of a ham.
Well,
Let's say.
I think his hammy qualities really work well here because
But I
you
I
need a
agree.
villain with a strong
Yeah,
presence, and I think that's the problem with the second film. You didn't really get that so much with William Sadler.
I think
And well, you
yeah,
didn't really have a strong central villain there. Yeah, William Sadler. You then had his friend in the SEALs, the Navy SEALs guy, and then you had
yeah.
Franco Nero's dictator.
And
And
like
neither three of them are that strong.
no, that's very true. And I don't think that's the fault of any of those actors because I think all those
No.
actors are great, all
Oh
three of
yeah.
them. But yeah, no, I think because like the villain situation is so convoluted in the second one, and like yeah, William Sadler is kind of given stuff to do, but it's like, and then obviously John Amos has to pretend that he's a good guy for part of the
Yeah.
film, and then reveal that he's a villain, and then technically Franco Nero's character is the big bad, but he comes so late in the film, and
Yeah.
he's given nothing to do. Like like
Except
like they
except
absolutely wasted Franco
yeah,
Nero, which is a
except
goddamn
except like
shame.
except try and fly a plane, I guess.
I guess. But it's criminal how much they
Yeah.
used Franco Nero. I mean, like they could have got any actor to do that,
Oh
and
yeah.
like I mean, it's ridiculous. But so yeah, the villain situation is so convoluted in the second one. It just nothing really hits in the second one. Whereas you very much got like you very much got a really impactful villain in this one, and I think like again, we're maybe kind of replaying some of the things from the first one because we got his kind of main henchman, Victor
Oh yeah.
Targo, who's kind of like the kind of invincible guy, much like
I
the
like
much like
how
the first
they
one. But like I
I
think,
like how they kind of upgrade Targo though, where
mm,
he's not just a mute henchman, but
no,
he's actually a co-conspirator with his own motivations. He's got his own inner life of his girlfriend, who's kind of a real henchman. She's like the mute sort of henchman who like, or henchwoman rather, who kind of slices up the security guard at the reserve bank and he's also shown to argue with Simon. So he's got his own conflicts going on. He's not just like your standard henchman, which I liked.
I know what you mean. He's not just lumbering muscle. He's
No,
he's clearly somebody who's pulled off his own plans and clearly is very much yeah, like you say, very much a co-conspirator rather than
although
just
interestingly,
the hired
although
muscle.
interestingly enough, I thought his final battle with McLean was a little chopped up.
So did I. I've
It felt
always
like a lot
felt
had
that.
been censored. And when I looked online, it turned out that the MPAA in America had cut, I think, about 10 seconds from it. And that makes sense because it's very choppy when he's fighting McLean with the sort of chain. It kind of jumps, it sort of jumps from like they're in one position. And then when it goes back to the school, trying to defuse the school bomb, then it cuts back to the fight scene and they're in a completely different position. I thought something's been cut here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I always kind of felt the same because like it kind of very it ends very abruptly. Like
Yeah.
like he's just getting absolutely beaten down by Targo, just being thrown into these shipping containers, again and again. And then kind of trips him over with the chain, and then very quickly after that, it's just like, oh, he's tied up and the fight's over, and it's like, huh?
Yeah, it's a
Like,
shame because normally Die Hard's really good with like one-to-one fights. Even in the fourth film, you had the fight scene between Bruce and Maggie Q. Obviously, Die Hard 5 is the exception because it's just shit in every way. But
it just
the other
fails on
Die
every
Hard
level.
films, yeah, but the other Die Hard films have been really good with like
Yeah.
these kind of one-to-one, hand-to-hand kind of combat stuff. So it's a shame with this one, it felt a little choppy.
Yeah, but and because I mean that's the kind of whole point of like these kind of Bruce Willis characters and characters like this that are kind of more in the kind of everyday hero, the kind of like Keanu Reeves and stuff like that as well. Well, certainly 90s Keanu Reeves. But you know, or even like the Van Damme stuff. Like the whole point of these types of fight is like they just get the tar beaten out of them, and then they make the epic comeback.
Yeah,
And like you get the scene where he gets the tar beaten out of him, but it's not an epic comeback. It's just kind of
no,
like he just comes
not at
back and
all.
suddenly he's won, and you're like, huh? So
Because
like
it's
you don't
because
get that joy of like the epic comeback.
because it's the only hand-to-hand fight scene in the film because everything
Yes.
else again is vehicular based or it's running from explosions or it's gunfights. And don't get me wrong, the film is great with the first two, particularly
Yeah.
there's also the scene where he's defusing the bomb in the train and the carriage blows up and it spills onto the platform. There's also the really great um chase scene when they're kind of on the highway in the rain and they're having the gunfights with with the car behind who's followed Samuel Jackson from the station. That's great.
Yeah,
But we
yeah,
don't get
yeah, the one where the he's been followed from Yankee Stadium,
yeah, yeah,
like for with the by the sniper and the sniper's friend,
yeah. And then
yeah,
you've
yeah,
got and then before then you've got, McLean trying to outrun the explosion that they've set up in the tunnel and the flood of water. I think they've blown up the dam,
Mhm.
and the flood of water's coming towards him, and he outrushes it just by chance.
Which
And
comes directly before the car chase we were just talking about,
yeah,
because like he
yeah, and then
gets
it goes from
thrown out.
him kind of being pushed out from the water just up a manhole, right up to where Samuel Jackson's driving. And then immediately after he gets into the car with Samuel Jackson, immediately the guys from the stadium give chase. It's going from one action scene right to another. And I think in between, you've still got the stuff going on with the cops trying, Colin Camp and Graham Greene trying to deal with the bomb in the school.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I mean, there's tons going on, and
Oh
like
yeah,
like we say, as soon as we hit the ground running, we
it
kind of
never
don't
lets
stop.
up.
It never lets up. And also, I mean, like it's got great bits of humor as well.
Oh yeah,
Like with that scene, like he gets thrown out the manhole by this rush of
yeah,
water. He jumps in the car with Samuel Jackson, says to Samuel Jackson, "Have you been followed?" And he's like, "No, I've not been followed." And immediately, like,
yeah.
immediately they're shot at, and then we're off to the races with another car
But
chase. So, like,
it's just great pacey writing, which
yeah.
I mean, okay, in the second film, I don't think he had a lot of it. Also, it tended to focus more on gratuitous violence. The
Mm.
plot tended to slow down for that rather than sort of interweaving it more in with the humor and the pacing of the film. And I mean, just going back to the fifth film in particular, the fifth film doesn't have that at all. There's awkward pauses for the humor to start. And then when it stops again, we then go back to very confusing, sort of badly cut together action. With this film, you know where all the characters are in relation to one another. There's never any confusion apart from maybe the Targo fight, but that's just more what's been cut out rather than where the characters are. Even then, you still know where the characters are in relation to one another. It's just, I mean, it
Yeah.
really is night and day, as I said.
Oh no, it is night and day. And again, I think like we're um yeah, like I think like Die Hard, like A Good Day to Die Hard is like you say like a failure on pretty much every level. But I also think the humor is just not there, and I think that's again all these things are connected to when and where they are released,
Hmm.
and like I think that like there's not a lot of humor like outside of like Marvel movies in that kind of period, that kind of like post Taken pre John Wick period, so like
Yeah.
2008 to 2014, there's not a lot of humor in action movies. Like, and it's why it's kind of one of my least favorite periods of action. Like it's just it's we're doing like this Zack
Also,
Snyder kind of dour, grim, dark,
also
thing.
But
Uh,
also, it's also the way the action is filmed. Like this is filmed at the height of shaky cam era, which affected
yeah,
the Taken films. It's where you shake the camera around a bunch to make it look realistic, when actually your stunt coordinator's not up to scratch, and you've not rehearsed the stunts enough, or your actors can't do the stunts. So it's to cover up the fact that you're using stunt doubles for them, or the action isn't very exciting. Because that happens a lot in the fifth film, and you can't compare it at all to the way the action is choreographed in the fifth film. I mean, even stuff like the false alarm at the school. I mean, the way Graham Greene's rushing the kids out and everything, and him and Colin Camber escaping with Zeus's nephews to the top of the roof. That's cut together far better than the main car chase scene in A Good Day to Die Hard.
yeah, yeah. I think I mean, you're absolutely right. It's all kind of
And again, also in that scene, it's where the foreshadowing pays off because Zeus's nephews who are attending the school that's being threatened by the bomb recognize that the Graham Greene character is a cop and think they're coming to arrest him. Thinks that they're coming to arrest them, so they decide not to go with him and stay in the school. Again, um, that's again, paying off the setup in their first scene where they steal the stereo or where they handle a stolen stereo. In Die Hard 5, the whole stuff at the end with Chernobyl kind of comes out of nowhere. And it just,
yeah.
you're
I
like,
think
where's this plot point coming from?
yeah, I think like the whole like you say, I'm kind of glad we kind of got over that, the whole shaky cam thing. But like, I think it can work, but it turns out it can work on very few occasions, and it turns out you need a really
Yeah.
skilled director. Like like shaky cam does work in the Bourne Supremacy and the Bourne Ultimatum, and Paul Greengrass, it turns out, is one of the few people who can make shaky cam action look effective and exciting. But not a lot of other people other than that, apparently, because I watched a lot of shaky cam action
Yeah.
in the late 2000s and early 2010s, and most of it bad.
Oh, also another thing about a plot point that pays off is when or rather, a helpful supporting character is when McLean's trying to work out when McLean's sort of trying to follow the trucks that he thinks have the gold bars in them from the Federal Reserve, and he
Mm.
comes across the helpful truck driver. I think his name is Jerry,
Joe,
who
I think.
happens. Oh, is
Was it
it?
Jerry?
Is it Joe or Jerry? Oh,
It began with a J. Um, you continue talking, and
right.
I will look it up just a sec.
Basically, there's a helpful truck driver called Jerry who gives him the answer to the riddle that Simon was talking about what's 21 into 42, and it basically means that the school that where the bomb is being held is named after a president, specifically the 21st president of the United States, which Jerry identifies as being Chester A. Arthur. And that's a great example of using a an important supporting character to good use and making him memorable as well, making this eccentric trucker who knows a lot of things, which again follows on from the first Die Hard, where you had characters like Argyle and so on, and which you don't have in Die Hard 5, apart from a wacky taxi driver who sings about Frank Sinatra.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, you're
Did
right.
you find out his name?
Yes, the actor is called Joe, but the character is called Jerry.
All right.
Um,
So
yeah,
that's 2 points to me then.
yeah. Joe's the loom, and the character is called Jerry Parks. So there we go. I knew it began with a J.
Yeah.
But yes, so it's Jerry. Where did the other point come from?
Well, I'm just pulling it out my ass like Die Hard 5 does with everything else.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. I was just like, okay, oh, that seems like 1 point to you, but but anyway, no, good, good recall there. But yes, no, the scene with Jerry is quite fun because Jerry kind of goes on this tangent about like the history of the tunnels, and like you can clearly tell that McLean is being bored to death by it, and
Yeah.
it's like yeah, it's quite a you know. He definitely makes the most of his like 2 or 3 minutes on screen kind of thing,
Well, it's another example of, again, as I said, when you were off checking the guy's name, it's a great example of a fun supporting character, which you had in the first film with Argyle, who knows
yeah.
a bunch of stuff that becomes useful later on. And you do kind of have that this second film, but it's not as good as it is in this film.
No, I agree. I think I mean obviously as we've mentioned the second film kind of goes up in your estimation once you've watched 4 and 5. But yeah, I do think of the original trilogy. Um it just nothing quite kind of works as well in that second one. I'm just gonna have so
So,
I was going to say, like, we've covered a lot of the film, and kind of coming towards kind of the end of the film. I was
yes.
wondering, because I think it's all quite tightly done. I think some people feel like the final act of this movie is kind of the weakest part of the movie, and I was wondering what you felt about. So I'll explain this for the audience
Yes.
in case they haven't seen it.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
like what you thought about the secondary twist. So like as we've kind of discussed, there is a twist that's much like the first movie, where basically we're pretending to be terrorists in order to cover up a heist. So it's a fake bomb threat, at the school. They've placed a fake bomb in a school, and they're there. So it's like a magic trick, and so they're not paying attention to the Federal Reserve. We steal gold from the Federal Reserve. However, there is a secondary twist that takes some explaining. So basically, they take the gold, quote unquote, onto a boat. Targo finds out that there's not actually gold on the boat. The gold has been stored somewhere else. Um, and they are blowing up the boat. Now, the stated intention in the message that Simon Gruber leaves to the Coast Guard or whatever um, is that they are blowing up the gold and kind of as a strike against capitalism to destabilize the markets because Simon Gruber is a former colonel in the East German army. And like, so it's for kind of socialism reasons. But then it's kind of also we get the kind of real reasons of like apparently some Middle Eastern businessmen have paid them to blow up the gold to destabilize the markets in order to line the pockets of Middle Eastern businessmen because they believe it will, benefit them financially in some way, but they kind of double cross kind of everybody because they don't blow up the gold and they take the gold for themselves. But then because people believe the gold has been blown up, then it should still have the same effect, and the Middle Eastern businessmen who are paying them to do this will still end up with the same profits because the gold is believed to have been blown up. So that's the twist as it's kind of stated in the movie. And like it's a bit naughty, isn't it? Like not naughty as in oh naughty, but as in like tied up, a bit kind of convoluted. Um, I mean, it kind of works, it's interesting,
I,
but like
I'd,
I'm
I'd
not sure that like
no, I like it. Although I would add that there's the further twist is that Simon intends to keep the gold for himself and his men.
Yeah, I mean that's what I
No,
said
oh
that
yeah, of course it is. Yeah, 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 yeah,
they've double crossed the businessmen
yeah,
as well because
yeah,
they're keeping the gold. They're not
yes,
actually blowing up
yeah, yeah, yeah,
as stated.
yeah,
So they're
yeah.
pretending to the businessmen and pretending to the
Yes,
world. Yeah.
I like it. I mean, I like it because again, it sort of adds on to what we saw in the first film, where there's actually a further double cross going on between Simon and Targo,
Yeah.
where they're not all sort of in cahoots, so to speak. There's actually some tension between the two, which we already see earlier on when Targo attacks Simon for keep for leading McLean along with his riddles and saying, why can't he just shoot him already? Not understanding that there's some personal investment in Simon doing that.
It does
Um,
lead to some questions about how, like, because like Targo like alerts some people to like it being like a scam, and some people
yeah,
seem to be not aware like Targo, but some people in the army seem to be the mercenary army do seem to be.
yeah.
So it does seem like there's a lot of plate spinning here. Like you're
Yeah,
like how many
because
people die, like
half of them were with Simon, some of them were Targo's men. Yeah, it is more complex.
yeah.
Although I do also like the way the role Katya plays in all this, where she's Targo's girlfriend at first, but then she turns on him to go with Simon.
That's right, and which is kind of set up kind of throughout. Yeah, it's kind of seeded, kind of from the tunnel sequence that
Yeah,
she might be more
yeah,
into Simon than Targo after all. Like
yes.
it's kind of so they do see that quite well that this woman's probably going to turn on Targo and be on Simon's side of things. Um, so they do see that quite well, but like it's
But once
yeah,
again, that adds another layer as well,
yeah,
where there's actually a woman coming between them, and again, it flashes them out even more as villains than rather than Simon just being a clone of Hans from the first film.
yeah. No, no. I agree. I mean, it is quite fun. It's quite fun the way they kind of set up the finale. Like, I guess that like maybe it kind of throws people like because um the stuff on the boat feels like the finale, and then like the stuff that happens after, like when John McClane like is going to call Holly and then
Ah,
realizes
yeah,
where Simon and the gang are, like because based on
yeah.
the kind of Scooby Doo detective work of like on the bottom of the aspirin,
Aspirin.
he kind of again the penny drops, um, so that feels kind of like an add-on to the film, if you know what I mean,
Well, to be
like
fair, that was an add-on, wasn't it? That whole
yeah,
ending where they tracked Simon down to a warehouse in Canada, that's all a reshoot.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
the
No, that's
original
true.
ending
That's true.
was Simon got away with the gold, and then a couple of months later, McLean tracks him down to, I think, Russia somewhere. I think he tracks him down to either Russia or Eastern Europe. And it turns out, because it's a special feature on the Blu-ray I've got,
Mm.
that he's been fired from the force. He's lost Holly. He was blamed for everything that happened, all the deaths, Simon getting away throughout the film. And so he challenges Simon to a game of his own using Russian roulette with a rocket launcher, and it doesn't fit at all with any of the Die Hard films. It belongs to a completely different film, and I don't even know why they shot it in the first place. I mean, so with that in mind, the whole bit in Canada actually feels like it fits in much better than with the other with what you would expect from a Die Hard film.
Oh yeah, no.
Despite it being smaller scale, with it just
Mm.
being Simon and Catchy in the helicopter firing a machine gun against McClane and Zeus, who is tagging along for some reason, it works so much better.
Oh no, I absolutely agree. It works so much better. Than the other alternative ending. What I'm saying with either ending, I guess like they both fit. Like I guess that like it's one of those things of like I think if you've watched a lot of movies, you maybe have like a kind of internal clock as to what the climax is,
Yeah,
and because like the climax feels like the stuff on
it
the boat,
does.
and then you
Yeah.
almost have like one of those when Zeus is going on the helicopter and like McLean is about to take the phone call. That's like one of those kind of classic post climax action endings almost.
Yeah.
So like
I mean,
anything
I mean,
beyond that feels like an add-on.
I
Like it feels
mean,
like
you
a kind
could
of mini
argue it
fourth
works.
act.
I mean, you could argue it works as a subversion also
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
because, and it also, to be fair, we also are expecting as an audience for Simon not to get away. He does need to
Yes,
get his
absolutely,
comeuppance, so we would
yeah,
be. But it does feel like, yeah, you are right that the film's slowing down only to start up again, and which again, yeah, I mean, there is a bit of a pacing issue there, but it's unavoidable given the real life circumstances of
yeah,
what led to that ending
yeah,
being attached in the first place. I guess the only complaint I would make is that it is a bit small scale. Like the way McClane kills Simon and Catchy is literally by, I think, firing a telephone wire loose and it hits the helicopter and causes it to blow up. You could argue that's a bit lame compared to how the villains died in the previous two films. But again, it works enough for me. It's not like, I mean, it's not a massive come down, but it is a bit small scale to what you would expect.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I guess I guess like you say, you always expect Simon to get his comeuppance, and uh, yeah, I guess that you might have been hoping for a bit more of a final confrontation. However, I will say that it's always because somebody another podcast we follow and website is of course the Exploding Helicopter podcast, and so like I'm sure
Ah,
they are always happy to point out for the exploding helicopter. So at least we do get an exploding helicopter, which is always fun. But yeah, it's not too much of a come down. I don't think it takes too much of the shine off of the movie.
no.
I do think it gets a little bit overly convoluted in the end. I think like yeah, there is a little bit of disappointment. We don't get like a better final confrontation, but you know, all being said, I think that it's a very minor complaint in what is a very very good action
Oh, it is.
film.
I mean, it becomes especially better when you look at what comes after it. I mean, it's kind of like how with the Indiana Jones films, Last Crusade only gets better when you look at Crystal Skull and Dial of Destiny. It's the same thing with this. It's, you look at what's to come, and it only makes it so much more of the better film.
Yeah, it really kind of it really does kind of elevate it, for sure. I've like as I said off record, I've still not seen Dial of Destiny, but
Well,
I've
I
heard
mean,
some
do you have to
amazing.
see it to know how bad it is? I
I
would
don't know.
argue.
I mean, like so, like comparing and contrasting to A Good Day to Die Hard. Like Good Day to Die Hard is like universally hated, whereas as far as I've seen from my from my Twitter X, whatever you want to call that feed, or my Blue
Oh,
Sky feed, or talking to people, Dial of Destiny seems to have got kind of more of a kind of shoulder shrug reaction than a kind of
right,
active despise reaction. More of a kind of like,
right.
yeah, it's fine.
I don't know.
Like, but so yeah, I don't know how terrible it is because of that. Because some people have said, oh, it's pretty terrible, but other people have said like, it's okay. It's not as good as
I
the
don't
other
know.
ones, but it's
Maybe
all right.
it's maybe it's the maybe it's the Indiana Jones fan in me just
Yeah.
reacting negatively to every little thing I've heard about the film from day one. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, no, I mean, like it was, when I first heard about it, I was kind of like, oh, do we really need a fifth one? Ah, it's not got Spielberg.
And and
Like,
and Harrison Ford is like 80 over 80 now. Maybe we should just give it a rest.
yeah, I mean, like there was all those concerns for me too, of like,
I mean, didn't we say all we needed to say with Crystal Skull and Last Crusade? Must we tell the story yet again?
yeah, I mean, like, I guess because I've not seen it, I can't say definitively whether I dislike it or Um, so I don't know. I mean, like, so I guess my only thought is that, like, as far as I can see from a lot of people, like, A Good Day to Die Hard is like one of those films that most people seem to hate. Most people
Oh
think
yeah.
it's like a 1 or 2 star film. Whereas, like, my feeling from the reaction I've heard from Dial of Destiny, most people think it's like not great, but like
Oh okay.
some people seem to think it's like scrapes into being a kind of 3 star film. Like,
Uh,
so like it might be okay. Like
okay.
um so like I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I've been, to be fair, I have also been putting off watching it because I'm like, because I'm on the fence. I'm like,
Yeah.
do I want to complete the franchise, to watch it for that? I do love Harrison Ford, but
Yeah.
yeah, but then on the other end, does it kind of leave a sour taste in the mouth? But I don't know. In the end, I'll probably watch it. I mean, I've watched also, there's other franchises that I've decided that I need to keep up with. That I've watched all sorts of terrible movies from, like the Alien franchise or the Halloween franchise or whatever. So like,
All right.
can't be any worse than the worst entries in those.
Oh yeah. The worst entries are god awful. Let me tell you. I can
Yeah.
back Scott up on this.
Look, I've sat through Alien versus Predator Requiem. It's like
Well,
so like
did you actually could you actually make out what was going on?
vaguely like yeah, it's not it's I I mean
I mean,
that's a
because
whole other level bad, like
yeah,
it's like
but you can't even lie to your film. Come on.
yeah, then I guess that again, that was kind of like that must have been like early 2010s as well. That's like, or was it late?
2007, I think.
Oh no, no, that's right, that's right. It was because I was just thinking, no, it must not be because it was like because like the original Alien vs Predator was like 2004, so yeah, it would be late 2000s, 2007. Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, so again, that was the kind of that kind of weird period, that kind of mid 2000s to mid 2010s. A lot of poor lighting in that era. A lot of not great stuff. Um, but yes, we've gone off. We've gone.
Way off
We've
topic.
gone way off. We've gone way off topic, which suggests that it might be time to start wrapping up. So, do you have any final thoughts on Die Hard with a Vengeance?
It's
Anything we've missed?
it's an above average sequel. Can't think of anything else we missed other than it's not just a great direction and great performance from Bruce Willis, but also just the importance of a great ensemble cast and a reminder of how difficult it is to make a good Die Hard film. I think that's the one takeaway I got from rewatching this. It's a lot more difficult to make one of these films than you think and to make it good.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree, and yeah, I think that's if people want to take away anything from this discussion, I think that's the thing to take away. I think it's far and away the second best Die Hard. I think that it impressively pulls off the trick of kind of recapturing the magic. Sometimes when a director, the original director from a franchise comes back to a franchise, sometimes it doesn't work. So sometimes they can't recapture that original magic. But I think that they very much do that here. I think this is up there with McTiernan's best, and obviously McTiernan, directing the original Die Hard, directing Predator, directed two of the best action movies of the '80s, right there. Like of all time, probably. Um, so I think it's high caliber stuff. It's near the best in McTiernan's filmography. Not quite the same level of Predator, Die Hard, but high up. Um, I think the chemistry that Bruce Willis and Samuel Jackson have is great. I think that Jeremy Irons is a really impactful, really fun villain, and the rest of the ensemble do their jobs well, and most of the action set pieces are fun and effectively done, and it's tight as a drum. Well, mainly tight as a drum for most of its, as we described, that kind of last 10 minutes or whatever has kind of is maybe a bit sloppier, but mainly tight as a drum for its runtime. And if you haven't seen it, which I'd be surprised if you listen to this podcast if you haven't seen it, but like if you haven't, I would definitely recommend it. So before we head on out, the last thing that we have to cover is the plugs for your podcast, Adam, and then we'll be done for this
Oh,
one.
okay, yep. Well, as Scott mentioned, I host a podcast called Films That Time Forgot that looks at forgotten Hollywood films from the 80s through to the early 2010s. I've recently restarted it. My next episode is actually going to feature Scott. It's next month. It's the 2005 Kate Hudson voodoo horror film, The Skeleton Key. Kate Hudson and voodoo, an interesting combination. So
I'd,
keep your
I'd say that.
yeah, it's available on most platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as SoundCloud.
Yes. And also, I should clarify for the listeners, because of timey wimey podcast stuff, you will be listening to this at the end of May. The Skeleton Key episode will have already come out and will have been available for probably a couple of
In
months.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, so like now it's not being recorded now, but by the time you're hearing this, it will have been, and
um,
and you can go back a couple of months in time from your perspective and listen to it. So I know it's very confusing. It's very confusing, but that's the way podcasting works. So
yeah,
thank you very much again, Adam, for coming on the show and talking about this great film with me.
no
And
problem.
uh, and thank you, listener, for checking out this latest episode of All 90s Action all the time. And please join us again next month when we will have more Die Hard type action because we will be talking about the Jean Claude Van Damme film Sudden Death.
Ah, that's
Until
a good
then,
one.
it is indeed. Until then, though, see ya.